All right, I think we're live. um, a few minutes ago, actually. Hello, everyone. Just wondering if I'm sending any video and audio. All right, so it looks like I'm live, but not sure if anyone can hear me or if I'm actually connected to anything. So I might be just talking to myself for now. And I think YouTube is working. Ah, there we go. Hey guys. Cool. All right. Sorry about that. I just got a weird notification I've never seen before here in the streaming software. So sorry about that. Should be good now. Awesome. All right. So what are we gonna do today? I think obviously with the new update of ZBrush 2021.6, and by the way, I have the recent patch 2021.6.2, so it's the latest version as of today, this recording on this stream, and it should be pretty interesting. So we're gonna have I'm gonna start a project. I just don't wanna walk you necessarily through every single new stuff because the Pixologic guys did a fantastic job. And in fact, if you wanna see kind of like the every single new tool in action on its own, like to understand what they do and all of that, Michael Pavlovich, he did an awesome job just showing like sort of what the tools are and everything else. So I don't want to double up on that. I honestly think that like if you were to learn these type of things, these new things, and see the practicality of it, how you can use it in the projects, it's better to start something, perhaps aiming to use them along the way, and then figure out how you can fit it within your workflow, or just figure out new workflows using them as well. But I think it's best to actually tackle in an entire project and then incorporate those tools rather than try them on your own, because otherwise it just becomes something like a gimmicky thing, like, oh, this is cool, and you don't really need you don't really see the use or the need for that. So anyway, what I'm trying to say is that I'm gonna actually try to, I don't know, create a creature or something like that, and hopefully with that creature, with that project, I can incorporate some things. So we're just gonna give it some time because it's pretty early anyway. And of course, if you have any questions so far, or if you already tried ZBrush, the new version of ZBrush, feel free to put them in the chat. I'm just gonna start with a blocking. I was actually gonna start with a move brush, but I thought, maybe let's start with one of the new tools. So I'm gonna reuse the Dynamesh resolution and Dynamesh this sphere. So something like that. I'm actually going to enable symmetry, redynamesh again, just so that we have a symmetrical mesh, maybe mirror and well, just so we have that center line there. I'm going to toggle the floor off. And the first tool that I found like really useful to sort of blocking things and start with something a little bit different from just a sphere, rather than start moving and pulling things with the move brush, is obviously one of the awesome new brushes called the mesh balloon, right? So this one allows you to create meshes based on the masking. So if you hold the control key, by the way, I already had it. So if it is the first time that you select it, you'll get a notification saying that it's going to replace your masking brush. So if you hold control, this is what you can see here. It has lazy mouse now, which is fantastic. That allows you to have a lot of control. I personally prefer to use this type of brush without the lazy mouse, just because the whole point is just to freely create volumes. So I'm gonna start with that. show you this. All right. So I don't know if you saw that, but the whole thing sort of like froze. And it's nothing to do with the resolution or anything like that. I think I have an issue with my computer because it was happening even before the stream. So I was hoping to, you know, avoid it, but let's just do it again. All right. I don't think this is going to work, unfortunately. It's just freezing for every time that I do a masking. So on that case, it didn't. Might have to just go like with really small masks. Which is not ideal for the workflow that I wanted to show you. But unfortunately, that's what's gonna happen. Unfortunately, that's the issue that I currently have with my computer. Don't think it has anything to do with ZBrush though. Yeah. So anyway, basically now if you hold Control and do this sort of thing, right? And that shape, that mask that I'm holding right now, is gonna be created into a mesh. Now, if I let go just as it is right now, it will be creating two meshes basically. So if you want to have it, two meshes based on the position of what I click. So if I rotate around, you see it created two meshes. That's because I also have symmetry enabled. But if you want to create something right in the middle, let's say if I don't know, this could be like a creature. So I want to create like a jaw or something. You can start by doing something like this, right? And before you let go, you press the Shift key, and that should put it right in the middle, right? So even though I have symmetry enabled, it just sort of like merge everything or combine everything together. So I'm gonna clear that mask. And one of the things that I think is important to highlight, right, is that you have all these really awesome tools, but that doesn't mean that that's just, that you should just use those tools because it's like the new thing to do, right? They are just an awesome new addition to the tools that you already have. So you can use a combination of everything else that ZBrush offer using those tools. So that's kind of like what the point that I want to make in this stream. So very quickly, you can create this type of volumes, and of course, let's just do kind of like a creature bust type of thing. So I'm going to start using the move brush just to add something that could read as the creature's head. Not sure what this is going to be, but we'll figure it out. You can also obviously use the move topological brush, and I have AccuCurve with this one. Obviously, every single new mesh that you add with the mesh balloon, the new brush, will actually build its own polygroup, or will be created with its own polygroup. So that's just a lot easier to control independent pieces, even though they're the same subtool. That's what I'm trying to do now. So all of these things, I sort of like went back to a traditional approach of doing things, because that's what I feel it's useful for my workflow. So you can see a little bit of what it could be the jaw, but you have the head, a bit of the neck, and just the bust. So you could do the same thing just by pulling things with the move brush. Obviously, with the new tools, a lot easier to achieve these type of things, and you have that sort of iteration and exploratory sort of process that it's really, really handy, I think. Like I said, unfortunately for me, it's just sort of like freezing, or for the stream it's freezing, so I don't want to have to reset things too much. So I'm just gonna do it one more time, see if I can get something going. That's a little bit better now. And obviously, the other great thing about this is that every time that you add one, it creates a mask, or it masks out the rest. So if you have the move brush as your main brush, and you have the the mesh balloon as your masking brush, obviously, you can just switch between the two and adjust things on the fly really quickly. So if I want to add, let's say, some deltoids here or something, I just add that and move it into place. So definitely a really cool hand tool. Right? I think it's getting a little bit better. Maybe it was something that I had enabled, don't know. And of course, we can do dynameshing when we need to. But to build those shapes and to build the volume to sort of start figuring out the creature, this is a really cool tool. Let me just check the chat. Hey, Rudvik, Alex, Jonathan. Which of the new functions of ZBrush is the one that was made the best? As in, which one would be my favorite? Because I think that's just a subjective thing. I have two tools that I found to be, really cool as for this update. I'll show you later. But basically, the snake curves, as in, as a feature, is one of my favorite things, and the other one is the mesh project and the mesh splat. So these two for exploration type of thing is really cool. Everything is kind of like it's in its own sort of sense. It's really cool, like the curve alphas and extrude profile, all of those things. It's kind of like comparing pears with apples, because they are really, really cool for a specific thing. So it's hard to choose one, but I'm all about like exploration and iterating and figuring out things or shapes in a way. So the masking brushes are fantastic in that sense. So is there a way to have a VDM draw out with it masking itself each time? No, because of the way that VDMs work. So if you're thinking about what I just did with the mesh balloon or the insert meshes, it won't be possible, just because you are not inserting new topology that ZBrush can say, okay, these points are new with a VDM, right? These points are new, let's mask everything else. What you're actually doing is taking the meshes or the points that are already in the mesh and sort of like deforming it to conform to that VDM. So ZBrush doesn't really know, where that thing is. However, there are ways to go about it. So you could duplicate it, create a VDM. That's kind of like a cool workaround where you can duplicate the mesh, extrude the VDM, and then use the intersection master to see the difference between the meshes, and that way you can mask any VDM. And it's Sardi. So what's new in ZBrush 2021.6? A bunch of stuff. So hopefully I'm going to show you a few things. I already showed you kind of one of the things. Unfortunately, some of the brushes are freezing up my computer. So we might not be able to show them all. How do you have the groups without the polygroups showing? I'm not sure what that question is. Yes, sorry, I don't really understand what that means. So what I'm going to do now is bring in the move brush, adjust the shapes a little bit, and what I want to do is keep things very simple in terms of the silhouette for now, just like reducing the bulkiness of this. Make sure this is it's kind of like a thin or skinny creature, basically. That's what I'm trying to set up first. And the reason I'm doing that right now is because I'm going to be using a couple of other features that I reckon you're going to really like. And I'm going to show you the way that I've been using them. Not that I've been using them quite a bit, because this is really new. Only a week ago or something, and I was away for the weekend, so I haven't had a chance to work on those things too much, but I'll show you anyway. All right, so at this point, what I'll do is I'm gonna maybe unify everything just so that it works better with all the brushes, and I'm gonna redynamesh everything. Maybe increase the resolution a tiny bit, even more. Oh, not that much. Just trying to find a good balance. All right, and I'm gonna do mirror and well just in case. So now we have a solid mesh out of those polygroups. I'm gonna grab some water. You did some cloth folds with the 2.5D. Oh yeah, this is a pretty cool trick. So what I'll do is, to work on the transitions a bit, I'm gonna smooth things just a bit. I don't want to lose completely all those crevices or lines that I generated. Oh, by the way, another really cool thing, and that's just for the ZBrush 2021.6 in general, or I think it was 0.5 as well, is the fact that now you have the alternative smoothing brush as a brush itself. So right now, when I smooth, the normal smooth brush is basically deflating things, but now if you go to the brush palette, you have the smooth alt, this one right here. So the smooth alt, you can set it as your default brush, and it's basically, when you smooth, you can inflate things. So you can access the same thing by holding holding shift to start smoothing, then release the shift key. It will give you the same result. All right, let's say that this is, something that could be an interesting creature. What I'll do now is to start exploring, more shapes that could be more out there. And to do that, we can go ahead and use these brushes: the snake curve 1, 2, 4, and 5. And don't know what happened with 3 though. I think that's just the name. But anyway, so these ones are fantastic. So this is the other thing that I really enjoy with the new update. So if you click on these ones, they allow you to explore a bunch of shapes. So I'm thinking to create some kind of like, coral, weird looking creature. Right now, if you look at it, in terms of the silhouette, it could be very easily distinguishable as an alien, with the head here, the neck and the chest. Not humanoid, but with human characteristics, obviously. But if I want to create or push it a little bit, what I can do, let's say, is use this brush to create a curve. So I'm going to draw a curve like this, and you can actually extend that curve like so. Pretty much in the same way that you would create any curve brush. But now that this is available, what you can do is extrude these things. So this works a lot better with Sculpting Pro, so that as soon as I start extruding these or moving things around randomly, almost with this curve, ZBrush will create topology. If I do it right now, it's just going to give me a bunch of spikes and points and distort it. So let's have a look at this. Right? So not very interesting. But if I enable Sculpting Pro, maybe reduce my editing brush cursor, I can start pulling this out like this. And you see how it really, changes things dramatically. So now I have this very cool sort of like neck or like flap from the neck. Let's just do the same thing here. So another curve, and this is just thanks to the snake hook brush effect, which is this random randomness that is added to these brushes, plus the Sculptris Pro. So I'm gonna do the same thing with that. So now I have these sort of like clumping together, and it has like an interesting shape here that I just saw. So I might explore this as well, but you could do it as well with the curve. So maybe something from starting from the jaw that goes over this, and just push this, maybe with a smaller brush size. I think it just froze there for a little bit. So look at that. In just a matter of seconds, we have something really interesting and complex that we can experiment with. That it obviously makes things a lot more interesting, right? Let's go ahead and do another one here, just to add kind of like another layer. And I'll show you something really cool that you can do as well with these brushes. All right, so I'll do one more here. But yeah, this is purely to explore shapes, and that's how I find it like really useful. You have to be careful though. You know, it's so easy to get sort of like immerse in this, you know, uh, I would say space of creating or exploring things that you can push things like maybe too far, and then you completely lose track or vision of what you're trying to create, and things are not like a creature anymore. Whoops. All right. So I think we're gonna have some issues here with the stream. Yeah. So I might have to reset the tablet again. Let me just check the chat. I'm gonna reset my Wacom tablet, so that might be the problem. In the meantime, let's see. This is not, no, this is not Blender. Hey, Luis Enrique. How you doing? Is the extrude depending on the camera? Not necessarily. It's just kind of like the curve sort of like inflates as you move it, so it doesn't. It's more depending on the normal of the polygons, but not a single normal. So that's why it's kind of like random. It does affect differently if you pull from the ends that if you pull from the center, and depending as well on the the size of. Okay, we're back here. I think so. Oh no, hang on, sorry. Oh yeah, this is gonna be interesting today. It's one of those days. Yep. All right. So I'm gonna have to restart everything, as in ZBrush and the Wacom tablet again. So just bear with me. Be back. All right, we're back. So hopefully this is going to last a little bit longer than before. Let's see. Yeah, so these ones are basically brushes to explore things, and they're like quite cool. I want to show you something that is probably not as obvious, or something that I found, like, again, testing, and I like to try to push things to break them. That's how I find things sometimes. So let's take the same brush that we're using. I reset ZBrush, so this is the thing that you would probably see. I'm gonna say OK and enable Sculptris Pro. So if I do another one here, another curve, and I go ahead and extrude that, so this is the effect that I'm getting with this specific brush, right? This is actually quite cool as a shape, actually. So let's do that one. Let's do another one. This one I want to keep it, so let's do another one here and do something like this, right? This is actually quite cool. Anyway, so this is the effect of the brush, of the curve, right? Like what you would expect. Even though it's random, like you sort of have an expectation of what the result might be when you pull this one. However, if you click, and as you do this, you hold the Shift key, you get this sort of like, it's hard to control, but you get this, maybe it's not from this angle. Let's do this, and then let's press the Shift key, and it will just sort of like increment the length of the curve at the same time that keeping those beginning and end kind of like locked. So it's kind of like inflating the curve itself. So if I do it again here, you'll see this is the normal effect. It's just randomly pushing those things. But if I do the same thing and then hold the Shift key, it crashes. Okay, let's do it again. Yeah, to be fair, it's, oh no, that's not the one. Hang on. Nah, I think we lost it. Yeah, no worries. We'll just do it again. It was kind of like this, right? And then yeah, it's not as cool as before. Let's do it another one. There we go. Something like that. So yeah, the reason why it crashed probably is because you know that some of these brushes, when you hold the Shift key, it tries to wrap around the brush. That's how you can create like loops and things like that. So you can hold the Shift key again to create these sort of like weird things. There you go. This is the issue of what's happening before. It's just trying to wrap around the mesh. But if you do it subtly, you can achieve something really cool. Just kind of like inflating stuff. So I just thought I'd mention that because it's something that I discovered kind of like as a mistake, or just as an error when I was working with this. But I thought it could be really handy. Cool. All right. So that's one. The other one that is pretty cool is this snake 4 and 5. So 5 is just to give you a lot more texture and surface noise. So this one, if you do this and you click, you'll see you get all of this sort of like noise, and that's just because it's using an alpha. So if I'm open up my, oh, you won't be able to see that one. Yeah. So it's using this alpha, this brush. So it gives you all of these sort of like nice noise or surface noise. Obviously I don't have a high resolution at this point because I'm exploring shapes, but if you were to do it with a larger resolution, you can get a lot more of that surface noise happening, and you can change the alpha to something else. Let's try, I don't know which one will give you a cool effect. Maybe this one. Let's try it. So you get, it's kind of like randomizing this alpha within the extrusion of that curve. So it's, quite interesting. I don't mind this actually. No, let's stick with what we had. All right. So again, all of these brushes are basically like the new brushes are to create these curves and and extrude things and essentially explore shapes, and that's what's really, really powerful. But then you also have the mesh balloon that I mentioned at the beginning. That's how we set up the base of this creature. Then you have the mesh extrude, the mesh extrude pro depth. This one is just a dot, and the mesh project and the mesh splat. So these ones are my favorite too. The mesh project allows you to kind of like create panels. I'm going to show you something really cool about this, hopefully. And then the mesh splat. So I might use this one quite a bit. I'm going to do like a creepy creature. And the other ones that are really cool as well in terms of brushes are the extrude profile 2, and the curve alpha. So this one allows you to create basically a curve that has a profile based on the alpha. So in this case, the start. So if I go ahead and change this to, I don't know, like an alpha circle and click to update, now you have the typical tube brush, but you can use anything. That's kind of like the beauty of it. So alpha 7, click and drag. Now you have like a bunch of hair strands coming out, which is fantastic. And there's heaps of application for this. Hopefully I'm going to show you something, later on, using these in a practical example, rather than just using these brushes to create hair, because this creature might not have hair or stylized hair. You can use these to create like really cool sort of like slimy things and that sort of thing. And it's something that I found really useful. So I'll show you that as well. But basically, this is another awesome new feature that it allows you to create, it extrudes the shape based on the alpha that you choose, right? So you can create really interesting stuff. But anyway, let's go back to what we were doing. So those two, the difference between these two is that this one already has, like if I do this, I'll have to split it. I'll show you later, because you have to split it just to show you that you have the polygroups as well. So that's how I'm going to mask those ends for this slimy thing that I'll show you. Anyway, I'm just getting ahead of myself. So let's go back to some standard brushes. Let's just work with the move brush, move topological, and yeah, let's just work with that. So again, it is great to explore these shapes, but I like to push things to a certain limit and then bring it back, or like sort of ground the design to something that could work a little bit better, and that it can be identified as a creature, not just like as a blob, unless that's the intention, but it's not in this case. So I'm just gonna take this. Let's turn off Sculptris Pro now. And things like this, right? Although look cool, they might become an issue for the definition of the creature. So we can go ahead and use the inflate brush, sort of like to merge them together, like this. Same thing here. And when we do the ray mesh, maybe we should actually increase the resolution a bit. We should have a cleaner mesh. There we go. So I kind of like the idea of this creature being some sort of some kind of like the hammer shark head type of thing, where the eyes are kind of like spread apart. So these ones could be the eyes. Now, this process now for me is kind of like working on the transitions as well as defining the silhouette. So the brushes to explore, or how I think Paul Gabriel called them the Bob Ross brushes just to explore things are essentially for that, just to explore things, but that doesn't mean that the product would necessarily work as a design, because it's too random in my opinion. But they're fantastic for that sort of exploratory initial, the initial stage of the process of exploring and figuring out the creature. So now this stage for me would be to figure out how those shapes or how those random or seamlessly random pieces and flaps and all of that actually work within the design, and function and actually make sense. So I'm just trying to do that just with pulling and pushing things with the move brushes, and that's what I will be doing. And if I had more time, this is what I would be doing for a little bit longer, exploring shapes. Actually can start, let's put the thumbnail here. Yeah, you guys can see that. So this is a really cool thing that it's been there for a while now, and I use it all the time, especially when I'm figuring out shapes. Like I said, like if you see here on the left hand side, that just looked like an inverted Christmas tree type of thing, so might not be great as a silhouette. From the side is not too bad, but something we can do is just exaggerate or contrast a little bit more the difference between the proportions. So I'm trying to generate a larger gap here, and I'm working. Oh, this is another thing. Again, I'm just trying to cover what I'm thinking of as I do it. So sometimes I just jump about all over the place. But this is another great thing when you're exploring things and you're trying to keep the exploratory or the iteration process kind of like fresh and abstract, is to just flip things around. So I sometimes do this, not often, but I do that when I do these type of things where I just flip things around, just rotating the camera and work upside down to try to, doing this help me to not focus on the actual creature that I'm doing, like just because if I go like this is all I see, right? I see the eyes here, and I see the head, and I see the neck with this flap, and the body here. Just because that's what I see, and I try to define that, right? But as soon as I, work like upside down, I'm sort of like tricking my brain in a way to focus more on the empty spaces rather than the actual creature. So that's something that I do sometimes, and I found it to be quite helpful in this specific case of using these brushes. Just gonna give it a bit of thickness and redynamesh. So hopefully that makes sense. And it's something that it's not just for creatures. It works for any type of character, really. So I think the silhouette is getting a bit better now. And another thing that I was sort of like emphasizing before, or trying to at least, is the fact that because these shapes are kind of like random or started randomly, and then you're trying to, again, ground that design and make sure that they sort of like make sense, even though it's a creature, make it believable, if anything. The focus really is on the transitions and making sure that they're not just volumes, that they actually make sense. So that's what I'm trying to do at the moment. It's just trying to add a bit of a, I don't know, like if there were like a tendon or a muscular or muscular thing going underneath. So for example, this is I'm just trying to find a good example, but maybe here, right? So you have this line here. In fact, let me just be more blunt about it. I'm gonna so you have this shape here, you have this other one. You could say that obviously this is another one, the head itself or the cranium. Let's say potentially this is another one. right? So you have these pieces that they would like the result of that randomness, and so when you're trying to design or you're trying to achieve something that's more figurative, I guess, even though it's a creature, then working on those transitions is what helps you define the the functionality of the design. I suppose that's a way to put it, right? I'll check the chat in just a second. Just want to finish my thought process. Yeah. So if I turn off the polyframe, right? One thing that I like to do is try to maintain a certain flow between all of these shapes, so that again they make sense as they're part of one single creature. I also have this fade opacity. Maybe I should just use that one. So that allows you to sort of fade the entire polypane, and you sort of barely see. It's kind of like an opacity layer. For you guys, that should be on the preferences. Not sorry, preferences render. It's right next to this one, to the fade color. So you can change the fade color as well, but white is pretty standard. Yeah. So with the clay brush, so this is my custom clay tube brush, but it's really, I mean, you can make your own. It's essentially, I took the clay brushes, the clay builder brush, changed the lacy radius, changed the roll distance until I found something that I liked. I think I set it to 6. Let me see. Yeah, so 6. I think the lacy ratio is the same, and a few tweaks on the modifiers, but nothing too different really. It's just something that works a little bit better for me. So with this brush, I can start to think about how this volume meets this other shape, and that is what I was talking about in terms of figuring out how the random shapes that we had before actually work towards the design, rather than just being a random shape. And that's also the thing that I mentioned, that that I would be pretty conscious about it when I use this technique of these exploratory brushes, because again, it's too easy to find something that looks cool, but sometimes you might lose, you might lose track of what you're trying to do. So be careful about that. And just by doing that, I sort of like feel this is a bit more integrated. Let's just turn off the poly paint altogether. And here at the back, you can start to see a better connection between these volumes. All right, I'm gonna do the same thing here. Trying to connect this a bit better and figuring out what I'm going to do with the eyes, because this is a pretty thin area. All right, so I just use the inflate brush just to generate a bit of volume there, so I can explore that, the placement of those eyes a bit more. I'm also going to bring in the damp standard brush, and that's just ideal to sort of go ahead and define, or start, not define it, but yeah, let's just call it define some of the lines, or like folds, or even just markings, to keep refining that sort of transition between the volumes. So holding the Alt key, for instance, in this case, you can sort of do that, and that gives you an idea where these sort of flap sort of connects with the chin in a way. So that's the type of thing that I'm looking into at the moment. Maybe some sort of reference to the mouth, maybe something that opens kind of like the predator creature, maybe. I don't know. That's the thing that's a little bit getting ahead of ourselves right now, but sort of works. And I'm gonna do a quick save just because it froze again. Let me just check the chat. Does it work with dynamics? Absolutely. I think so. I mean, sorry, I just saw that. I don't know if there's a question previous to that one, but yep, dynamic. Everything works with dynamics. Would you use that curve brush for curly hair? Yeah, you can do that. In fact, you can rotate the curve. I'll show you in a second. Have you retired a big pen? No, I still have it. I use it just to demonstrate certain things, but yeah, when I need to. Haven't needed it today, but it's there. Oh yeah, one thing, maybe I should just show you this before anything, guys. Hang on, because I have some. I need to close some things because I have some secret stuff that I'm not going to show today. So yeah, probably I'm sure you're aware of the NFTs thing happening, disrupting and bringing the digital artwork to the to new levels, basically, which is super exciting for digital art in general, and I'm really excited about it to finally be able to expose other people to the artwork that we do as digital artists, as well as finding value in it. So I'm working on a sort of like special or like a rare collection of artworks that I want to share as NFTs. So just giving people the option to buy it as a unique thing and be the owners of it, which is really cool. But before I do that, I just want to keep creating the stuff that I'm doing, and hopefully getting one of those cool platforms that are a little bit more curated than anything else. So I'm trying to figure out what's the best way to join something like Foundation app. So far, I think it's just with invites, and they are a little bit hard to come by at this stage. So if you know someone or anyone that has one of those, that would be cool. So yeah, I'm just gonna continue working on the kind of like the collection of like really kind of like unique stuff that I haven't shared or anything online. I don't want to repurpose stuff. I do have one currently in OpenSea, but that's just kind of like a test to figure out how the whole thing works and understand a little bit more of the whole NFT thing. But I'm gonna do a proper drop once I get access to one of those platforms. But in the meantime, I want to focus on the art part of it. I don't want to recycle old stuff. So just want to focus on something new, interesting, that is going to be valuable in a way. And once it's ready, hopefully join one of those things. Yeah, I also read about the. So for those who are asking about the carbon footprint, there's a bit of misinformation going around. I would, before jumping into any of that, I would actually suggest to do the research and try to keep your be open-minded about it, and read arguments from both sides. There's some scientific sort of like papers. I think it's from Cambridge University, the one that I read. Like if you're interested, you can direct message me, and I'll send you the links. But basically, the misinformation, based on what I've read and what I've learned, is nothing to do. I mean, anything that has crypto in it, or the blockchain or whatever, has an impact. But the NFTs and what the artists are doing, they're not necessarily changing or affecting that footprint in the sense that again, and I'm new to the whole thing as well, so I'm just going purely from what I've read, and I'm not claiming that it's the right thing, but I do tend to do my research, and I tend to read quite a bit of things before I can, provide an opinion. So this is just purely on what I read. But basically, the blockchain, and what they said in this article as well, is that the blockchain, as the Ethereum blockchain, it runs at a certain speed. It has, or not a certain speed, a certain amount of energy at a time, and any transaction that you do doesn't affect the amount of energy consumption. So what we are doing as artists, and all of these NFTs, all the transactions that they've been, generating, they're not changing, not affecting us they're not increasing that footprint. So there was a nice analogy in one of the articles that I read as well. Can't remember where, sorry, but they were saying, if you think about the blockchain, the Ethereum blockchain, as a train that is going at a certain speed, whereas the train is kind of like the blockchain generating that footprint, or generating that electricity consumption with some seats. The transaction will be kind of like the seats or the passengers, basically. So I'm not explaining this in the best way. I'm just sort of like trying to paraphrase and remember what I read. But basically, every transaction is kind of like a passenger that you put on a seat. So it doesn't matter how many passengers or how many seats you have in the train, or how many transactions happening. The train is going to be at the same speed regardless of how many transactions are happening. So again, if you know a lot more about the whole thing than me, happy to be contested about the whole thing. But based on what I read, I understand the concerns of the the footprint and carbon footprint and all of that, and I'm fully aware of that. It's just that doing one transaction over another is not really going to change the amount of energy that is being produced. So basically, the other thing that I was reading, or they were saying, is if one day everyone decides to just stop doing transactions with the Ethereum blockchain, it's not going to change. It's not going to affect that. Right? And this might be controversial, so happy to argue with you guys if you want to. Yeah, there's some things that are free. Like I said, I'm testing one out in OpenSea. It's the name. You have Rarible as well. There are a few options online. I just kind of like there are two platforms that I like, which are the Foundation app as well as the Flow. Flow is where you would put it, put the NFT where you minted, but it's called Vive, Viv3, and that's where it would sit, and the trading, if anything. But yeah, so I do have it in a free side to test the whole thing and understand the process. Oops, sorry, just froze. And having the online wallet and doing the transference and all of that, because you still have to pay a fee and stuff. But the reason I would like to join one of the ones that I mentioned is because it is more curated, and I don't want to be bungled in with the sort of everyone else that do it just because you can. I still want to be able to kind of like this is kind of like a weird thing, but obviously it's fantastic for everyone else that is making money out of it, and it's great that it is valued as art. Like digital art can be valued as art, and it can be traded like any traditional art. But I still feel like the artist and the artistic input should be valued over anything else. And that's what I sort of find a little bit, I mean, this is a whole new discussion, but I do think that those platforms that are a little bit more curated, even though it's hard to get in, and that's what I'm just saying, that I haven't got an invite or anything, the good thing about that is that it sort of provides some kind of filter, and I think that's a good thing. So hopefully that makes sense. But anyway, going back to this creature. So yeah, by the way, if anyone has an invite and wants to share it with me, I'll be very grateful. Anyway, the other thing is I'm just interested in joining the. Sorry, it just sort of froze again. Yeah, Raf is Grassetti is in Foundation. Robert Pencil. There's a few people that I know that are there, which they're doing great. But yeah, again, it's different from what I'm saying, because I think the point that I was trying to make is that is for a new artist or someone that hasn't created any, or hasn't published or shared any of their artworks, to join one of those platforms and expect to be very successful. It might be great as a as luck, but it's not valuing that art. Someone like Grassetti would who's really well known, and he's a fantastic artist, like an inspiration for everyone. When you buy one of his NFTs, it might not be one of his NFTs might not be the the design of God of War, right? It might not be one of those in terms of the time that he spent on that, on all of that. So that's probably what people might say, oh, this is not as complex or whatever. But you would own a Grassetti, if that makes sense. So as the artist, he's the artist. So you could, if you're just into for the money, for example, you could potentially trade that in later on, because it's like, oh, I bought a Picasso, or I bought a Degas or whatever. There is value in itself because of the artist, and that's what I'm trying to protect a little bit. So that's the reason I want to join one of those platforms that curates things a little bit more. And it might not be, again, I'm happy to be wrong. I just feel that that sort of artistic part should be valued a bit more. As in, not the art piece. Like, I could do a block, or like just a cube online, like a 3D cube. I saw a 3D cube going for like 28 grand or something. I could do that, but as long as it's me as an artist creating that cube, then if you get it, you're getting a cube made by me, not just for the sake of doing a cube because it's a simple thing. I don't know if that makes sense. But yeah. But anyway, another thing that I wanted to share with you guys, some of you might not be in my newsletter. By the way, what's the time? Oh, we still have plenty of time just to add the eyes and explore this a little bit more, because this is still very sketchy. I quite like where this is going, but I got distracted with the NFT talk. I just want to add a bit more volume in certain areas. Yeah, so if you're not part of the email list, Sorry again, it just froze. I share something. I share my new project last week. I will do a recap this week as well. But in case you are interested, I also have a new kind of like hub website. So if you just go to pablanda.com, like my name, well, my handle in social media, it will just give you an overview of my projects. So I just made it because I got some feedback about like, oh, I don't know what you are doing in terms of, oh, is it the ZBrush guides or the 3D concept, what exactly that is. So I'm just going to show you this and show you the new project, which is, I think is really cool. So if you just go to pablanda.com, and I'll share it in here. This is a very simple one-page website, just of myself, obviously, but to give you guys a simple and easy access to the projects that I'm working on, so you're aware of what they are, with a little description. So the 3D concept artist is basically where I have the like in-depth courses and live workshops and that sort of thing. So you can just click on this and go there. ZBrush guides is probably the one that, you know, is the one that I've been doing for the longest time, and those are the tutorials, the guides, everything, and it's mostly ZBrush related, hence the name ZBrush guides. So for different things that are not necessarily ZBrush related, the 3D concept artist might be the resource, although I do ZBrush for most of my things. You can click here to join the newsletter, right? And that's when I sort of deliver like tips and tricks every week, news and stuff that might be interesting. I have other training that you can just follow as well, including the ZBrush Live. So these links to the website or to the playlist of all of these ZBrush Live things that we do. So you have it in there. And this is my new project. So the 3D snippets. So if you go to 3dsnippets.com, it's basically, I set it up in Patreon. If you click on that, it just sends you to Patreon. So it's called 3D snippets because what I do ideally is just to, so it's 9.5 Australian, I think it's $7 American. But basically every month, what I'm trying to do is create a project from start to finish, and I'm want to walk you through the whole thing. So there's a bunch of things that I've done already. So in the last month, February, this is the one that I built. Again, so I walk you through the different process. This one is the one that I use as a demo for the brushes, for the creature brushes that hopefully I can show you today as well. And you know, in the process of building those, the testing brushes, things that I was coming up with, I also share them in the Patreon on this project. And the cool thing is at the end, so it's kind of like a mini guide magazine at the end of every project / month. Every month, the idea is to come up with something like this. I would share I would have to join as a patron to show you, but it's kind of like a PDF guide with a recap of the process, the different tips and tricks that I share and things like that. And I also do live workshops. So basically, if you go here and just check it out, the idea is to offer or share a little bit more that one you can see in this type of streams. So because this is like ZBrush centric, is sort of loosely based on, well, not loosely based, is focusing on ZBrush and all the cool stuff that you can do with ZBrush. And then I share like a render or something, but there's a few extra things of my creative process that most of the time they don't see the light of day because I just don't have time to go ahead and create a tutorial on texturing or the sketching process or everything that goes before I do anything on ZBrush or after or in between ZBrush and the render. So that's hopefully what the 3D snippets can do. It's just like little snippets of the entire process that hopefully give you an insight into how to, and hopefully help you as well to create your own stuff. So I just drop it there in case you're interested. The files, projects, individual packs, and ZBrush guides, only Patreon, Comics Legends. So the idea is that the packs they are in ZBrush guides, so you can just go ahead and I will show you quickly. So if you go to brush, this is the new pack. It's available already from the ZBrush guides. So it's a bunch of brushes that are for creature detailing. I'll show you one. I don't have much resolution, but basically it's just to add details like that, like if you were sculpting, right? So that type of thing. So the pack is ready, it's available if you want it. But the Patreon is kind of like my it's a space for me to explore things, right? So some of the things that I show you here, yeah, I test things and I figure things out, but I'm more confident on what I'm doing because it's something that I've done before. In the Patreon, I can explore and be more, figuring things out along the way and show you what I'm doing. So I might create a new brush that is going to be on a pack later on, but it is a testing brush, something that I'm just trying to figure out. So I would share that, and that's what I did. I shared with the Patreon, on the Patreon files. I shared a couple of brushes that I was testing, so I can get feedback saying, yeah, this doesn't really work, it's not really good, or if it works, you still have that brush. And you also get like a 25, I think, or can't remember how much. There's a discount, obviously, for anyone that is part of the Patreon. So anyway, just wanted to clarify that, and because I've got a few questions about that. But yeah, hopefully it's gonna be a cool thing. It's still an experiment anyway, so we'll see how we go throughout these months. I have already started the new project for this month, for the month of March, and we're in the kind of like sketching stages. This week we're gonna have the workshop, the live workshop, where we're gonna do a little bit of feature mapping, define the tools that we're gonna be using, that sort of thing. And again, it's just so that I have the space to explore other things, not just ZBrush, or show you how I use some of those tools as well, or additional tools, or how I use them in combination with ZBrush, because that's the beauty, and that's why I use ZBrush quite a bit, because it's really easy to integrate it with any other workflow, to be fair. All right. So at this point, there's nothing new in terms of the new features of ZBrush. I'm just doing we're building on what we did before using the new features, but this is just, sculpting, varying the brush size and things like that. So nothing too complex. I'm gonna do a redynamesh, perhaps just increasing the resolution a bit more. But we're starting to get there. This is a process that I really enjoy. When you have like the main shapes sort of blocked in and they kind of work. Just figuring out how everything really works and how if there is like a bone area or like a bony area here. I'm just gonna work with the back face masking just in case. And the back face masking allows you to work on thin areas like here and protecting the back side. So even though it's just like a shark type of thing, or like a hammer shark head, we're gonna make it a bit more creepy, hopefully. By the way, the exploratory brushes that I was talking about and that we used to generate this earlier on today, they're not just to explore shapes. They can be used to detail things and just change the size of the brush. So for instance, let's give it a go here. And now that we have more resolution as well, we can use something like the Snakehook 4, smaller brush size, and do something like this. And just by doing that, we create this sort of like mushroom type of thing, which is quite cool. we can sort of work with that. And let's go ahead and repeat the same around here. See what that gives us. Yep, kind of works. So you see, it's still exploring things, but you know, more on the refining and detailing side of things. All right, yeah, I think my tablet is gone again. So I'm gonna do a quick save and do another reset for the next 45 minutes. Hopefully, it's gonna be good. I mean, it lasted for a while. We managed to go to this point, so it's fine. So give me 2 seconds. I'll be back with a new restart. All right, we're back. Where were we? All right, so yeah, we're talking about those like additional details that I like to just refine, like so. Using the move topological, we can also sort of like be a bit more careful on how we adjust these shapes, especially here that are really close together. Just because if I were to redynamesh the whole thing, and if they're too close to each other, they're basically going to collapse there or merge in that area. All right, but let's go back to the clay brush. So this one looks too random, this new addition. So what I like to do is precisely what I was doing before, just working on the transitions. And the clay brush is just my preferred method, but it could be done with the standard brush or any other clay brushes. So just trying to include or transition into the actual, let's say, the skull of this creature, right? So all of these weird looking wobbles, that's what I want to make sure it feels part of the same. It feels connected, at least. I'm just going to go ahead and run a close holes just in case, just because we've been using Sculptris Pro, so there might be, it's hard to see, but there might be some holes in here with the Sculptris Pro. Well, we can just do a redynamesh, basically. It's the same thing. All right. The other cool thing about this, random shapes, especially at this stage, is that they could give you ideas as to how to refine the sculpture, right? So it might, before I had sort of like straight lines going in here towards the neck, and they were working fine. They still have, there's still this one that is pretty obvious, but I can go ahead and work with that to bring it closer. But even those sort of like random shapes gives you ideas on how to, change the direction of the design a little bit at this stage. So I quite enjoy that process. So far, it's just sculpting things. All right, so the eyes will need a lot more work. So I think what I'll do is I'm just gonna close this gap, make it kind of like a blob. We'll refine it in a second, and just use the move brush to make sure the main sort of shapes are working around there, around the eyes. Not 100% sure about the back area, but I'm just playing a little bit with the proportions. Sorry about the freeze again. If you look at it from the top, it has like an interesting shape, sort of in this front area, or like if you look at it from the side, from the front, not from the side, it looks pretty interesting. But from the top and from the side, I don't think it's having the same impact. So I'm just playing with the proportions, maybe make it a bit narrower or not as deep. I think that works. And now I can see maybe we need some work, maybe around what could be the shoulders of this creature. I'll just do it with a standard brush. You could do it with obviously with the brushes that we've been using, the exploratory brushes, but this one I think it just gives you a bit more control, especially when you already have an idea or like an aim with the creature or what the design you're doing. Now you can just be a bit more careful about where you place certain things or certain details. And I want to keep certain areas as well clean and out of, with no details, just so that we can have a nice and a good balance in contrast and things like that. All right, I think it's getting there. I'm going to go ahead and increase the resolution again for this sketch, Redynamesh, clean this a bit, and I'm going to bring in the eyes, and then hopefully I'll show you some other cool stuff about the new features in ZBrush, which might not be necessarily what I want to do for this creature, but just to show you a bit more of the new features rather than just the sculpting thing. Do you know if Pixologic is developing a VR version of ZBrush of some sort? No, no idea. I don't think so. No, but I have no idea. I don't think it's possible because of the way that ZBrush is built, but I might be totally wrong. All right, so what I'll do is there's actually in case you don't know, a cool new macro. If you go to the macros, right, there is this macro called append or add eyes. Let's see, it's one of these ones, append eyes. So if I click append eyes, ZBrush is going to add a couple of spheres with the toy plastic material and make them black. So it's just a quick, easy way to add this. So I'm gonna bring in my Gizmo 3D, make sure, let's go ahead and center it, and make sure the local symmetry is enabled. By the way, another thing, guys, in case you haven't seen it, I did share my current UI on the newsletter. So this is the type of things that if you're part of it, you will get. So the one that you can see here, I share that so you can actually, follow along, or if you like the arrangement of elements that I have in my UI, you can also get it, as well as I did the flipped version, or like the mirrored version. So this is my preferred UI, just because I'm right-handed. So I have this thing on the right-hand side and that sort of thing, but I did a version for left-hand side people, so you can have this on the other side and that sort of thing. Anyway, so with the local symmetry, I can go ahead and scale these individually and place them. I'm gonna go to transparency, turn that on. And I think that should be a good placement. I'm gonna turn transparency off, go back to the head, and let's just adjust this. I just wanna make sure I cover, maybe with the transparency, even just to make sure that the roundness of that area is kind of there. Another option, by the way, kind of like this spiky bit, yeah. Another option when you're doing these type of things with the eyes embedded somewhere, use an insert, like an insert sphere, and then just merge that together, and you will have that sort of volume that I'm trying to adjust with the move brush already, fitting nicely as a sphere. Okay, so let's turn on transparency, turn that off. And now we have that sphere inside. We can use something, you can use the damp sander brush. I use my knife tool, which is a custom version of that sort of knife, sort of damp sander brush, but with a bit more, it has a lot more strength, and the effect is more visible, and you can use larger brush size to still get a very sharp brush. So this one just allows me to cut in like really quick. That's why I call it the knife brush. And this brush actually is part of the clay brushes. So if you have the clay brushes pack, this is the same one that it's included in there. All right, so I just cut through it to reveal the eyes. And what I'll do now is I'm gonna bring in the move brush, and let's do. And with the move brush selected, I just need to adjust what could be the the eyelids of this creature. Now I'm just working on kind of like an interesting lacrimal area there. But I think this one think this one works. It has kind of like a drowsy type of, like a sleepy look, which is fine. All right, not gonna spend too much time on this because I could spend quite a bit of time on the eyes. For me, that area is, you know, where the expression happens, obviously, and what we're drawn to see. So I tend to be quite particular about how I do the eyes, or the expression that they have. So I'm not going to spend too much time just because I want to show you some other stuff, and we already have like 30 minutes left. But we have a good blocking, a good sketch with the brushes, with the new brushes. And I might leave this one as it is, or continue it in the Patreon, so that the next time we have something else, like a new project. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what you guys want to do. I can continue working on this, definitely. No problem at all. And again, if you guys have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I'll have a look at the chat in just a second, when I'll show you something else. All right. I think it's just a matter of continue refining the shapes a bit, but for the most part, I would say the secondary shapes and the primaries are there, and they're working this creature. I think it's just a matter of refining and start figuring out where to place the details and what sort of surface this is. If it's kind of like a crab, hard shell type of thing, or more like a, just soft tissue or cartilage. Those are the type of things that I'll start thinking about the design as I move further into the refinement of the actual design of the creature. All right, so one thing I like to do is going to give it a bit more thickness to this eyelid. I said that I was going to spend too much time on this, but just something that makes it feel a bit more realistic. Thicker eyelid, and just refine it a bit more with the damp standard brush with the inverted effect. And what I can do as well is let's use some of the new tools just for the sake of using them. I'm going to use the eyes as a base, and I'm going to select something like the mesh project, and I'm going to go ahead and hold control. Actually, I'm going to turn off the poly paint so you can see what I'm doing. Hold control, click on lazy mouse, and I'm just going to do a tiny mask like this. And the depth of this is based on the C intensity of that specific brush, so the mask brush. So this is something quite important. If you find when you're doing this thing that it's too thick, what you can do is hold control, hold space just to bring in the quick menu, or right click as well, right? So you have the intensity of the damp standard brush. But if you, with this menu enabled, if you hold control, you can reduce the intensity of that masking brush, something, 25 or whatever. So when you do this, it's not gonna be as thick. And that's all I wanted to do. I just wanted to create a piece that is projected on that shape, but I'm gonna actually split on mask points so that I can select these individually. I can do a quick dynamesh of that, maybe with a bit more resolution, a bit more than that, right? And that would just be something that I can place within the eyes here, gonna close to the lacrimal area. It's just another quick way to generate a mesh that you can work with. Dynamesh again. Might have to increase the resolution a bit more. There we go. Okay, that's it. Now, to use again some of the new brushes as well, if you wanna, just to show you something else, you could use that project brush, which essentially uses the mask to create that mesh, like the mesh balloon that we used at the very beginning, but it would project whatever you do or whatever mask you have on to the mesh. So let's do a quick save. And let's use the mesh project. We still have time for the other cool stuff. So far it's been just a little bit of the new brushes and mostly designing a new creature, but I'm just gonna use this as a base now to show you another set of cool tips and things that we can use. So with the project, so holding control, if I were to do this kind of like a crab or add a bunch of panels, I could start by doing that. So hold control, So it shouldn't take that long. Again, it just froze again. Sorry about that. But it basically, this is what it does. You define a mask and you can create that panel there, right? Which is great for hard surface modeling. But I've been using it for, testing, what's the name? Organic shapes. And now if you don't move the camera, and this is something really cool as well, you can lock the camera obviously in ZBrush. And as long as you don't move the camera, you can do another control click and drag to do the mask. And if you hold the Alt key, you subtract. And if you hold the Shift key, you would add. So I'm going to do it just because, again, it could freeze again. Show you what I'm doing. So hold control. I'm going to add control. So holding control to add more and then Shift. So control. And then before I let go, I press Shift. And in theory, it should have added, but I think it's because every time that it freezes, I must have moved it. But you can delete things. I'm probably not going to use that just because otherwise it's just a waste of time waiting until it unfreezes. Again, something to do with my computer. But basically, yeah, you can just hold control and do that. The other one that I want to show you, so it's unfortunate that I cannot show you the entire workflow because I would just add a bunch of those masks around and create a bunch of these little sort of extrusion and then refine them kind of like pieces of hard shell on top. But hopefully you saw roughly what it does. The other one that is really cool is this mesh splat. So I'm going to use this to give you an idea of how to create this sort of slimy look as well as the curve brushes. So the same thing applies. I'm just going to turn off symmetry so that we have something holding control, and I'm just going to do a mesh like so. All right. So again, it just freezes, but it does it. It shouldn't be the same case for you. This is just an odd case for myself. So it creates these sort of like mesh or weird looking, based on the alpha as well. So it's really, really powerful. You can actually change that. think if you hold control, well, not in this case, but it just creates this weird mesh that you can sort of separate and then work on it in with dynamics, which is what I was doing. So before I do that, I just want to show you something else that again is not super obvious. So let's undo, hang on, auto group. So this is the mesh that was generated with what I just did. But if I want to have a bit more resolution, you can control that as well from the brush palette. The mask mesh modifiers. So these mask mesh modifiers apply to the brushes that I've been showing you, like these that work with the mask. You can control the resolution of it, the smoothness of the bevel. Right now it is grayed out because the default brush that I have selected is the move brush, but if I hold control, you access to the resolution, which, you know, right now is 128. I can increase that resolution and get something a bit more heavy. The smoothness as well, you can change that so it's you know, less smooth. And the bevel effect, won't be visible in this case. It's more for like the project tool, which you can be, you know, you can change the level of bevel. I don't know if you saw that. Let's just do one here. So that's the bevel that this thing refers to. So 0.5 gives you that bevel. The smoothness means that if you try to draw like a square, it's automatically gonna try to smooth the corners. So if you do something like that, you'll see it's gonna try to smooth those corners, and the resolution as well obviously has to do with the amount of points. So you can just play around with that and make something sharper or not. But I think I'm happy with this, just to show you what it's going to do. By the way, the thickness of this is also determined by the Z intensity. So like I said before, if you go to the right click or spacebar to bring it this pop-up menu, the Z intensity that you see right now is the move brush intensity. But if I hold control, you can change the Z intensity for the mesh splat. It's different, sorry, which is 6. So if you increase this a little bit, it's going to create like thicker pieces in here. All right, so let's go ahead and I'll show you what the reason I wanted to do this. Every time that you add it, obviously it masks out the rest. So I can split these. So let's go, oops, hang on. Here we go, in the subtools. I'm gonna split on mask points. And now I have this mesh on its own, right? Which is, you know, it's just a Dynamesh object. I can redynamesh it. But before I do anything, I want to make sure that I have a bit more resolution, just a bit more. And I'm also going to inflate things a bit. There we go. Maybe not that much. All right. And I'm going to go ahead and also auto group, just so that I can quickly isolate any piece that is sort of like floating on its own like this. Maybe this one, hide this one as well, and delete hidden. Just do a quick cleanup. You don't have to do it. You might just leave it like that and, you know, Dynamesh it with the, you know, the head and continue refining. But I want to do it like this to show you two techniques that I found to be really cool. So the first one is that if I were to combine these two, because they're different meshes, I can use the masking features or like the masking plugin to extract a mask defined by the two meshes. So let me just explain this a bit better. I'm gonna go ahead and duplicate this, put it here at the bottom, and duplicate the head as well. So I'm gonna turn everything but the head and the mesh. So I have this mesh thingy, that net, in one subtool, and I have the head in another one. Because these are two different meshes, right? They have their own topology. There's no continuation. I can go ahead and merge them together. You know, on the merge tab, you can merge down. So now these are in the same subtool, but they still are different meshes, right? If you hold Control and click and drag to reDynamesh, it will obviously merge together. But if I say go in here, you'll see these are actually two intersecting meshes. So the reason this is important to sort of like understand and use is because I can use something like the mesh intersect or mask intersect, I think it's called, to generate a mask of the difference between these two. And this is really useful to refine the placement of this mesh. So I'm going to go ahead and use the C plugin here. And this comes with ZBrush, so it's a default plugin, an official plugin. I have some extra ones that you might not have, but I think I lost it. Oh, here, intersection masker. So the intersection masker is just one button, and it works based on the difference in, like if you have multiple meshes combined into a single object or a single subtool, it will just find the difference between those two. So if I click on this intersection, so in this case, this is not a closed mesh, so I'm gonna have to split that. So split hidden, I have to fix it first. And the problem is that there might be some holes somewhere, and that is a problem. But should be fine now. I'm just gonna use the inflate brush to make sure there's no like flat surfaces. Maybe inflate it a tiny bit more. Close holes. Let's try it one more time. There we go. So sometimes it would give you an error just because if you have like a piece that has open geometry, you will struggle to figure out where that continuity is this specific plugin. So now it's done. So we basically went ahead and looked at the difference between these two, or where these meshes are intersecting. That's why it's called the intersection masker, and it will mask that region. So if I hold Control and Shift to select the head, you'll see the mask that I got is based on the intersection of that polygon or that mesh. The same thing if I select this mesh, I get the masking based on whatever is intersected by the by this face or the head. So this one is really useful for adjusting this. So for instance, I can go ahead and select this guy here, right? And I'm gonna go ahead and clear the mask. Oops, clear the mask holding Control and click and drag, and then mask everything. Oh, oops. There we go. And mask everything. So now this is completely masked. I'm gonna invert that selection. Let's invert. Oh, come on. Control and Shift, click and drag to invert. And now I have this mask. I'm going to invert the mask by holding Control and click, right? So now I have just this area that is on mask. Oops, actually, I didn't need to do that. Let's undo that. What I wanted to do was just blur the mask a little bit. So holding Control and click once on the mask, just to blur it, bring back everything. And because I masked this mesh, now I can use the inflate brush to refine only these areas, kind of like this thing is embedded properly within that creature, which is super cool. So this is actually part of the creature. The transition is kind of like make more sense, almost like this mesh or this thing is sort of like putting pressure on the skin or the flesh, and generating these sort of like pieces bulging out of it, which is super cool. So you can still do this without the masking tool, but just the masking allows you to keep an eye on, be a little bit more free in the way that you apply this effect, I suppose. But it's really cool. It's like, when, I don't know if you had this when you were a kid, but it was like these Play-Doh characters, like just the plasticine, and you just push through like some things with different holes, and it create like this spaghetti type of thing. So basically the same thing. So it's like you're pushing through this. The grid would be the mesh that we generated with the masking brushes, and then you're pushing through this material to to make it grow like that. Then I can clear the mask, and these things are still, look how cool and interesting this looks, and it looks integrated quite a bit. And you can obviously redynamize the whole thing. This is still our separate meshes, so you can refine them individually. You can split things. So really, really powerful in terms of adding details and randomizing things a bit. But having control over that randomness, I think that's the key takeaway, I suppose, from what I'm trying to explain and what I've been doing with this creature, is that embrace that randomness. That's like a really powerful powerful feature to explore designs, but also make sure that there is an input from yourself, as in that it makes it's an intentional. There's an intentionality with the design and with those randomness. So use those tools to your advantage and to improve your workflow. So that's one thing. The other cool thing is I'm going to take the original one, and I'm going to duplicate that. But this time I'm going to move it up a bit, maybe scale it as well. Right. So I have this mesh, and I can make use of the other brushes, or the other features in ZBrush, like dynamics. So this is really, really cool. So I can take dynamics. I'm gonna go ahead and give it a red color just for the sake of contrast and showing you what's going on. I'm gonna click on collision volume, which tells ZBrush to look at everything that is visible right now in the canvas and convert it into a collision volume, basically. And that's it. I can just maybe reduce the gravity strength because that's too much, and click on run simulation. And now we have this super cool slimy thing, like a membrane or something that this guy is going through, or who knows. I'm gonna just scale it in this x-axis bit, just to make it a bit more interesting and create like longer or larger holes. So let's do recalculate, just in case. I mean, it's the same volume, but just in case. Let's run it, and we can stop simulation. That's another amazing thing about this dynamics in ZBrush. And I can go ahead and select the standard lasso masking brush, and I'm going to mask some of these areas up, right? Sort of like just to pin them in a way, right? So I'm going to blur the mask a little bit, holding Control and click the mask, right? And I can go ahead and rerun the simulation. So now it's going to add on top of that simulation to make this sort of like stretch. If you don't want this to stretch, you can store a morph target, and that would try to maintain the volumes a little bit better. But I do want to, allow the stretchiness of this. So I'm going to go ahead and rerun the simulation. So you have that sort of seaweed type of thing. Take the move brush. Oh, I have to take the move brush actually. I mean, this obviously makes sense because it's kind of like gravity and stuff. But you could, if you wanted to, you can just go ahead and use the cloth hook brush, and that would just allow you to manipulate that membrane and do these sort of weird things, which is super cool. But I think this one works. I mean, there are certain things that I don't like, but again, it's just making use of the tools that we have in ZBrush. So I don't like this bit in here. So what I can do is just select lasso. Hang on, what did I do? Hold Control and Shift. Remove that. Remove that, and then I'm gonna click on Delete Hidden, and I'm gonna click on Close Holes, and I'm just gonna run the simulation one more time. Oops, I think I deleted that. It's fine. Let's roll all together. Oh no, the tablet is gone again. All right, I'm just gonna finish it up with my mouse. All right, close holes. Let's run it again. There we go. And we can obviously, do these multiple times on top of each other. So this could be something that I could render with transparency. I just want to do one more and then show you the last really cool trick with these new brushes. I'm going to duplicate. So this is the same one that we had before. Maybe I'm just going to rotate it around to get a slightly different pattern. Or you can just, use the control and drag a new pattern altogether. Let's give it a different color just for contrast sake. Same deal. Let's go to calculate volume, run simulation. And there it is, another one. So we can adjust. All right, so this is pretty cool. And we want to do it a bit more, or give it a bit more of this right now, because the mesh was really thin and we ran simulation, there's sort of like collisions or like coplanar things. So this might be a good option to, use the intersection mask to remove kind of like the backside and run it as a single-sided mesh. But this is the way that I found useful. Now, just to wrap it up, let me show you something really cool and cover one of the questions in the chat about the curly hairs. So you could generate an alpha from whatever you're doing. So if I go ahead and use a Cube 3D, right? You have this Cube 3D, and we can go ahead and use the mesh splat, hold Control. There we go. So that's our mesh splat. I'm gonna unmask or split unmask points. So now we have this mesh, right? That it's just a 3D mesh that I can convert into an alpha and then use that to extrude anything that I want. So this is really cool. Maybe this is too much actually. I might just wanna inflate things a bit. I think I just overdid it. Let's keep it a little bit simpler. Yeah, something like this. And let's go ahead and split unmask points. So like that, and I could actually remove. This will make sense in just a second. Just bear with me. Oops. Sorry. All right, so I'm gonna delete that. Right, so I have this mesh. That is a 3D mesh. I can go ahead and go to the alpha. Let's put that here on the right hand side. I'm gonna go ahead and expand the create. Where is it? Oh, it's here already. So from mesh. So if you click from mesh, ZBrush is gonna take a look at what you have in the canvas, and it's gonna create an alpha, so you can rotate things around. And this could be a really cool way to generate some alpha details. So you can just click on OK, determine the size of the map, and now literally this is just an alpha that you can use. I attached it by mistake to the hook brush, but we can select it for the standard brush, right? And we can change the stroke to be drag rect. So now you're dragging this alpha. So let's go back to this creature. So you can do this just to add these as details with alpha, which is super cool. But that's not what I wanted to show you. So this is just a cool extra thing that you can do with it. We can actually take that alpha that we created, and we can create a mesh out of it with this flat thingy. So if you enable this flat, it's going to create a mesh. This is an actual geometry mesh that is just a flat single-sided polygon. So this thing is what I was telling you, that if you want to avoid, let's say the coplanar meshes that I used before in that sort of slimy thing, you can generate an alpha like this, and this is a single-sided polygon, but it's actually geometry, right? Has resolution, and you can just copy and paste this into your mesh, to your working file, and run the simulations on this. And this will be a single-sided polygon that you can control the thickness separately and that sort of thing, which is pretty cool. Now you have this mesh, and you can use something like, let's go with curve alpha, or actually let's go to extrude profile. Sorry. So the extrude profile are the ones that take a profile being a mesh like this, and extrude a curve based on that. So you have a bunch of these ones that come with ZBrush, and these ones generate some really cool stuff. So what I'll do is I'm going to add this one to this profile curve by going to the brush palette. And in the brush palette, you have these two buttons, from mesh and to mesh. So to mesh is just going to take what you have selected in the brush and convert it into an object like here, like I have here. But I'm interested in creating a brush from this current mesh. So I'm going to click on from mesh, and you'll see it just added this thing as an alpha. So what this allows me to do now is click and drag to draw a curve, but the profile of this curve, if I go ahead and isolate this, the profile of this curve is going to be exactly that mesh, that alpha that we created, which is crazy, right? So now we have this thing that we can maybe smooth, polish, right, and get this really nice sort of looking strand of hair. One thing though that is important that you might want to check is there's plenty of resolution, let's say, on the side, because it's basically extruding those points that you had in the mesh. So if you want to reduce the amount of loops or the amount of edge loops that you have in here, then you just need to reduce the resolution of the mesh essentially. But if you want to increase the amount of, let's say, horizontal loops, right, what you can do is increase the resolution of the curve itself. So let's go back in time a bit. So I can go ahead and go to the brush modifiers with this brush selected, and here you have this curve resolution. So right now at 1, it just gives you this very blocky thing. You can increase that to, let's say, go for 6 and do this, and now you have something a bit smoother, right? So this is really, really cool. I'm gonna do one like this, and this is just to answer quickly another question from the chat. If you have something, maybe let's do it with something a bit more obvious, like this one. So I'm going to select these random squares and click on the curve to update it. Same deal, it's just extruding that shape, but this obviously is a bit better to understand what I'm going to show you. If you want to do this kind of like curly hair, what you could do is hover over the brush, over the curve, and you get the editing thingy, the editing brush. In fact, I'm just going to increase the length a bit more. So you get this this effect, and you can just right click or holding the spacebar to increase that brush size of just the editing brush, right? So you have the blue one that edits the curve, and you have the red cursor that actually creates or changes the or accepts the curve. Now, if you hover over these, let's go to the end. Oh, just do it here, and you click to edit, right? Just push it down. You click to edit, but then you hold Control. You can actually rotate this on itself. So this is a very quick way to generate this sort of like curly hairs, stylized, obviously. And that's just basically clicking on the curve and then holding Control just to rotate it. So you have a lot of control. Not to mention the new controllers of these curves. So if you go to the stroke palette, might not have time to show you this in depth, but again, so if you go to the curve now, you have this bend start, bend end, lock start, and lock end, and that gives you a lot of control on how to basically control this curve. So now I can just click on this and move my curve around, and you see this area at the end is not being affected because the bend start is kind of like enabled. If I enable bend start and bend end, that's kind of like the old way of the curves. So you can manipulate them and then get this very, fluid way of doing things. You can also lock start and lock end. Therefore, when you click and move, you can only change what's happening in the middle. But anyway, that's just for another stream, I suppose. I just wanted to show you that you can quickly create those sort of curly things. And going back to this one, the one that we just built with all this resolution, what I'll do is I'm going to turn off the modifiers. So right now there is a fall off because the size is enabled. So if I turn this off and do another one, you have pretty much the same consistency in this. It just generated this rotation, but that's because of another another cool thing that was added under the picker palette, which allows you to control the closest point of the sculpt and the furthest one. So again, that might be for another stream. I'll go in more depth about this, but just with what we have right now, I can go back to this creature thingy, and let's say I'm going to go to the picker and I'm going to click on 1C. So 1C allows me to establish the depth of the curve based on the first click that or the first point that I click. So I'm going to click on this and do something like this. In fact, I'm just going to do a straight line or a straighter line and reduce the brush size. I think that's fine. Maybe undo that. Okay, so this is gonna be slightly heavy. I should have done it. Let's do it with a different one because my mesh, it's a bit heavier. So let's use these circles. Select that and click to update. So now we have circles. That should be a little bit easier on the machine. And let's go ahead and click somewhere else to accept that. And I'm gonna go ahead and split hidden or split mask. So now we have this piece, and we can use the move brush just to push things inwards a bit. Just a quick tweak of the shapes. Again, hopefully this is going to make sense in a second. But now, because of the shape, it was a mesh, we have a different polygroup at the beginning and at the end. And of course, the extrusion is a different polygroup. So I can hold Control and Shift and select that. Right? And that allows me to mask things quickly. So I'm going to mask the ends of this. And let's invert that. And that's it. We have masked those points. So we're basically pinning them. And we can go ahead and work with dynamics, which here they are. We can recalculate volume, definitely, not a problem. But now we can do run simulation, and we have these slimy things hanging there, right? And the cool thing is that you can, again, let's go ahead and do auto groups, and we can select a few of these right? Mask them, and then continue the simulation. And this time maybe we can allow expand. Oh, sorry, no, because I have the other thing mask here at the top. We can simply use something like maybe reduce the firmness a bit. Do that. Mask these ones as well. Run simulation again. All right, so you start to bring, create those like very natural sort of like drapery of objects there. And then you can use the hook brush, just push things down a bit. Oops, I think I lost my masking when I remove the mask, and use the move brush to adjust that and bring the other slimy bit here. So just another way to use those brushes. So I just wanted to show you that, because obviously the first thing that you might try would be doing something like the stylized hair, which are fantastic for that. But there's so many other uses. You can use booleans to create like cool bevels and cool indentations using these brushes. There's so many different applications for it. I just want to show you to wrap up, because I'm already over my time. Where is the mesh that we created? We might have to create it again, actually. So let's go to alpha. From mesh, create this alpha, and then flat mesh. Here's the mesh, and we have 100. Yeah, that's fine. So I'm gonna go ahead and copy. So this is the other alternative. Copy. Go to my creature and paste. So now we have this single-sided mesh. If you want to create more of that sort of seaweed type of thing. So we have that mesh, and it's single-sided. We can go to dynamics. Let's give it a different color so you can see dynamics. Where are we? Dynamics. Again, recalculate for the new volumes and run simulation. This one is going to take a little bit longer because it's obviously a heavier mesh. So something else you can do is just run a quick serial mesher. In fact, let's just do that. Let's just do serial mesher in half. There's a bunch of holes, so this is actually a very complex mesh for the serial mesher. Hopefully it's not going to crash. The more holes like that you have in the mesh, is the hardest is to figure out kind of like a nice topology and keep everything in quads. But the serial mesher is one of the most powerful tools, so it should be fine. So we reduced it from 120,000, I think, polygons we had before, points that we had before, to 30,000. That should be a lot easier to compute. And again, let's, recalculate that just in case. And let's run the simulation. So it's running a little bit faster now. And this inflate slider here determines like the collision distance, basically, between the mesh that we are simulating and the volumes, or the collision volumes of the head. So now we have more of that gooey stuff, which is pretty cool everywhere. All right. So if I were to render this with transparency, you will see a little bit more of the creature. But the point of this one, so the blue slime is kind of like different from the rest, because this is actually a single-sided polygon. The other ones are kind of like coplanar, so it might be an issue. But this one, you can go ahead and enable dynamic in ZBrush. So geometry, dynamic subdivision. Hopefully it's not gonna crash. No, it's all right. So you enable dynamic, but this time I'm gonna change the smoothness. I'm not interested in smoothing this out, but I'm gonna enable thickness. So I can control the thickness of this object. You see now it has thickness. If I turn this on and off, I can control the thickness as a uniform thing after the fact, and I can turn off the smoothness as well. And also right now I think that we have some crease edges because of the difference in polygroup. So if we go to crease, let's uncrease all. That should do the trick, no? Oh, we don't have subdivision. There we go. But yeah, that's just another way to control this, right? So you have a bunch of these things, and now you have this very thick, slimy thing. And you'll see, but because I ran the simulation, this is the gap that I was talking about. That gap is due to this inflate. So if I set it to 0, the calculation is just going to allow you to, or the simulation allows, ZBrush allows the simulation to actually collide with the object. Right now, there's kind of like this virtual boundary that it doesn't cover. But since we can control the thickness, we can invert the offset of the thickness. So in the dynamic palette, right, it's generating this kind of like in the positive value. So you see here, this is the surface, and it's sort of extruding it up. But we can take this offset and go to -100. So it just pushes it down, and we can just increase the thickness a bit more, just sort of like to cover that. And we can apply the thickness then if we want to. Actually, I'm going to apply it without the smoothness. Apply that, and then we can go ahead and, to remove that sort of sharpness of the edges, we can go ahead and let me reset my custom UI. Something happened there. Anyway, we're nearly there. Go to deformation, and we can go ahead and polish. Now my mouse is gone as well. All right, polish. So that's too much. Maybe just smooth things out. Right. So you see that there is quite a bit of a difference between this blue mesh and the other ones that we did. So I just wanted to give you an alternative method to that. But yeah, using those tools is just really cool to be able to work out new things like this. So hopefully this has been helpful. I'm gonna leave it here, guys. So I went way over my time. ZBrush, Pixologic ZBrush, you ever going to update the Ultimate ZBrush Guide? Oh yeah, about the ZBrush Ultimate Guide, the Ultimate ZBrush Guide, the course that I have online. I'm hoping to open that for inscriptions like later this month. So if you're interested in joining, that will be available. And I try to keep it updated. In fact, there's gonna be new content. Like if you were to join now, which I do some like live sessions. And so just to include or show the new features and stuff like that. So it will be part of it. But that's about it. Alrighty, guys. So again, I'm gonna leave it here. Keep an eye on social media. If you follow me, I'll put this one there. And if you're interested in kind of like more stuff, outside of the world of ZBrush, but also in ZBrush, like I said, the one that I share with you guys, that's kind of like the it's called 3D snippets. I lost my tab where I wanted to show you that, but yeah, it's called 3D snippets. So you can just go to 3dsnippets.com, and that's where you can follow the progress of the monthly projects that I'm going to be doing. So I'm going to try to aim for a portfolio piece, something polished and everything every month. So that's another way to sort of like hold myself accountable and push myself to produce more stuff of high quality while I walk you through the process. Alrighty, so I'll leave it here, guys, and I will see you next time.